supposed to give him that sign anymore.
You'll see when we get to it. All right. So what I want to do first is I just want to review briefly to make sure everyone's clear about the sugya we did on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which is the question of the 4 insertions. So just as a preface, because I didn't express that clearly enough before I started this year, but it's kind of like a slightly masochistic thing to take up a sugya where we're already going in with certain preconceived notions, and
I feel like we've said that word way too much.
so the issue we took up was the question of the 4 insertions. So what are the 4 insertions? On that Zachem Tshuva, Zachein l'chaim michamocha, Ksol l'chaim and B'sefer chaim. The 4 insertions. All right. So what's the problem with them? So the problem is based on the Gemara and Lamed Al Lamed Aleph. So the Gemara there says, in brachos, all brachos sugya. So the Gemara in brachos says that a person is la'olam ha'isha adam tzarchav lo b'shlosh rishonos. So basically, a person is not allowed, brachos lamed al lamed aleph, a person is not allowed to do what? He can't ask for his own needs in the first part of Shemona Esrei and the last part. So if I had to ask you, what Shemona Esrei, how many parts is Shemona Esrei broken up into? 3. What's the first one called? Sheva. The second one? Kasher. The third one? Sodas. I think where it says the reason why is because it has the analogy of an Eved. An Eved, for instance, he would always go and before he asks his master for something, he would be mishabeach him first, as an example. Okay, or once you receive the prize, right? You always before you leave your master, you always say, "Oh, bye, thank you very much for giving me the prize." So the point is that the Gemara gives very intuitive rationales for why you would not be able to ask God for things in the Shabbat section or the Hodah section. Because of this Gemara, you have a serious problem. Because if the Gemara says you can't ask for things, or it seems like a person shouldn't ask for things in these sections. So how is it possible you can have Zachein l'chaim, Micha Mocha, and these other ones put in sections that don't belong? Obviously, the assumption is Zachein, Micha Mocha, those 4 things are all bakashas. All right, that's not an issue. I want to make sure it's clear. It's not an issue about these 4 things. They are all bakashas. Uchsov l'chaim tovim, b'sefer l'chaim brachos shon nizacher v'nikasev. Those are all requests. Okay, but if that weren't bad enough, in brachos in Yud Beis Amabeis, Tosfos, in commenting on the sugya of Melech HaKadosh, so as we all know, the halacha today is, if I say, which happened on Shabbos by the way, someone said in Mincha, Hakel HaKadosh, and then I was like, and I wasn't sure if it was Ksof Dibor, but then he went back and said Melech HaKadosh. If you say Hakel HaKadosh and not a Melech HaKadosh during Aseret Shemei Tshuva, what do you have to do?
Go back
to the beginning. Okay, so on that point, Tosfos says the same way that you have to go back for Melech HaKadosh, so too you have to go back for Zacheinu. If I forget to say Zacheinu or Micha Mocha, I have to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. We do not pass in that way, but what's crazy about that is that it's bad enough. What?
What's the thought process?
Right. What do you mean the thought process? In other words, how can he possibly equate Zachein l'chaim and these 4 insertions to a Melech HaKadosh? A Melech HaKadosh is an open Gemara.
Well, the right? Says Bakasha, so you're going back on a Bakasha.
How can you go back on something that has no source in the Gemara? All right. So
what about what he said? Why?
So a good question. A good question is that why is the Gemara the line? Because the Gemara, let's say, is Anshe Knesset Gedola. Okay, let's make it simple. And the Gemara represents the halacha of Anshe Knesset Gedola. So once they made changes, that's it. So you can't have new changes in Shemona Esrei afterwards that are ma'akev. You can add things in. For example, let's take piyutim. So piyutim are added in when? Later on. So those could be added in, like those additional, like melech elyon, like those things we say in Rosh Hashanah Chazos Shatz, or the kel arach din, right? Right. Those additional things, those are added in later on. So that's okay to do, but you can't make them ma'akev. You can't say if I didn't say the piyut unusana tokef, I don't have my musaf. That's absurd. Ma'akev means that this thing must be said, and if you don't say it, you haven't said Shemona Esrei.
It becomes a
So starting at the spectrum, okay, so you have, in the spectrum of Shitas, okay, on one end of the spectrum, you have, which the Avud Ram brings down. The Avud Ram says, there are Ga'onim who say, very simply, you cannot say these 4 insertions. Why? Because the Gemara says, Al Yisha Adam Tzarchav, can't put them in Shebach and Odah, and these 4 insertions would violate the principles. So what do we do today? We should not say those 4 things. That's one end of the spectrum. Okay. The other end is Tosfos, who holds that not only should you say them, but you must say them. And if you don't, you have to go back and start over your Shemona Esrei. Okay.
So we just did that one.
It is. I apologize. Okay. So we've established one end of the spectrum is one end of the spectrum of the Gaonim, okay, who say you do not say it. Who say you don't say it. Toso says all of them must be said. All of them must be said. Okay,
All of us, all-
Gaonim 1, because we're not sure which Gaonim there are. Some Gaonim say all should be said. That's how you paskin today. We paskin like number
All
2.
should.
All should be said. Because if you don't say it, you don't have to go back to Shemon Esrei. Okay? So the Avud Ram brings down, just to be clear, the last position, which is do not say them. And that seems to be the clearest one because that goes against what the Gemara says. Okay? Now, within number 2, you have this divergence, okay, or modification. You have Rav Hai Gaon who says you only say the last 2,
Okay.
and the reason why is because the first section is Shevach, but the last section is Hodah, and there's a precedent in Hodah. We have Al Nisim, you have Yalav Yavo, you have precedents in Hodah that you can have insertions, but you don't have such a precedent in Shevach, so therefore you only say the last 2.
Wait, where's
Okay, so what is Rav? This is all in the Rashba, by the way, in Ramadan al Alf in the Rashba. The Rashba says that Rav Hai Gaon says you only would say the last 2, Ksov l'chaim, Sefer Chaim. Why? Because we know in that section of Hodah, what do we have in the section of Hodah? Al Anisim or Yalav Yavo. Okay, those are bakasha. Well, let's say Yalav Yavo. It's bakasha-ish. Yaleh, we should go up. V'yavo, v'yagia, v'yireh. Those are all type of bakashas.
Is it bad to look for a line? Why is it not a?
He's just saying one thing. He's saying that you could, for lack of a better term, pollute the section of Hodah with other tefillas that are not Hodah. In other words, the key things are not Hodah. They're bakasha-ish. So therefore,
It's already been violated.
right, since the violation is taking place. Right, no, really, since the violation is taking place. So therefore,
Sounds cruel.
you might as well put that in also. Then you have the Bahag who says that no. He says there's only one of them you could say. B'Sefer Chaim. Why? Because Sim Shalom is, now it's very weird what he says. I'm not 100% clear on it, but he seems to be saying that Sim Shalom is removed, that's his Lashon, from the Shemona Esrei, so to speak. And therefore it's a lot similar to be like part of Tachanunim, which are supplications. What's the key of understanding Tachanunim? Tachanunim are not Hodah, and not Bakasha, not Shevach. So therefore you could stick B'Sefer Chaim in that section. That's the Bahag. And then the final one is you can't say them at all. Alright, so again, going through the spectrum, Tosfos says you must say all of them, it's Ma'akev. Shita number 2 is Gaonim, which we pass on like today, all should be said. Bahag, only the last 2. Excuse me, Rav Hai Gaon, only the last 2. Bahag, only the last one, because Tachnunim. And the last position is don't say them at all. So from a methodology standpoint, right, so when you're facing something like this, okay, which at first glance seems like a huge mess, all right, what does the mind first go to? What's the first step to take? Okay, take the extremes, right? You've got to take the extremes now, because you don't want to mess with these guys in the middle, because you don't know what they're talking about. You want to take the extremes. Now, just to make it clear, though, we have to be careful. When I say extremes, what I really mean, though, okay, is that these two are really one extreme. All right, because remember, there's 2 issues on the table. Now, you can't balance lots of things. This is very difficult to do. But there's 2 issues. One is violation of the Gemara, right? And the other issue is the source, right? One violation of the Gemara, I mean the Gemara says you can't put these things in Shevach or Bakasha, or Hodah. And the other issue is the source. You have to separate the source issue out. If the source issue is not an issue, meaning the Gemara never mentions Achrein L'chaim. If you take that issue out of the way, right? For as far as we're concerned, these 2 are the same.
So I don't get the source issue.
Okay, because the source issue is Tosfos says Tosfos agrees essentially with the Gaonim that they need to be said. Only question is does need mean ma'akev or not?
Oh, so that's my source.
That's what I mean by source.
It's Mahlokas, can or can't.
Right.
And can have
but,
to.
But what I would first worry about is I'd first worry about the issue. The way I approach it is to worry about the issue of al yisha adam sarchav. How do you deal with the violation of the Gemara? So really, what that means is that you have one extreme here and one extreme here. Can you say these or can you not say these? Can you or can you not? Forget ma'akev.
Once again, Abu Draham.
If we focus on the extremes, okay, so now where does your mind go to? What makes more sense?
The middle.
5. That's not the extreme yet. 5 makes more sense, right? And 5 actually doesn't really require any type of Sarah, because what's 5 going to say?
It's long.
It's very.
Well, it's not right. The Gemara. What? So what do we now? So that 5 is the easy side. What do you do about 1 and 2? How do you get around the violation of the Gemara? All right. So we took 2 steps. All right, and this takes a little while to develop, but there's 2 steps we took. So one step we took was that the first step is like this. The first step is that if they're going to require you to go ahead, Insertions require. If there's an idea that you should say Zachrein L'chaim in Shevach, right, and the last 2 in Hodah, what is that doing? In other words, why not, so to speak? Why not just put these things in the middle section?
It is
changing the type of tefillah you're saying.
Right. In other words, it's changing the entire. It's changing. What it is it's changing the character of the tefillah. Right.
I like the T word there.
Theme, but you got to be careful. It's not changing shevach. It's just superimposing an idea onto the Shemona Esrei, which is that your entire Shemona Esrei should have the character of bakasha. Why? Because we're in a time of need. This time of Sarah made tshuva should be one where we're more aware of the state that we're in. Okay. So that's how you answer Sarchei Rabbim. All right, I forgot to mention that. So what's the chiluk? The chiluk is
distinction.
So Sarchei Rabbim means needs of the many of the am.
What's chiluk mean?
The separation. No. Like in other words, there's a difference here.
Okay.
So it's not that Sarchei Rabbim is a different kind of tzorech, right? It's saying that there's a certain idea that assuming the Sabraim did this, there's a certain idea that during Aseret Shemei Tshuva we're in an urgent state of need. So that's reflected in the fact that our entire Shemona Esrei, there's not one point during our Shemona Esrei we're not mevakesh from Hashem. It's a Shemona Esrei of bakasha. All right, that's the idea they want to express to the Shemona Esrei. Not that you should do shevach, but there should be an entire character of bakasha. That's step one. Now, one second. Now, with that step in place, now comes the next step, which is that okay. Well, what about the Gemara? So the idea is that you can't read the Gemara as being an absolute. And that's what the machlokas is between 5 and 1-2. Is the Gemara saying that it's impossible for bakasha to be expressed in shevach, meaning that those sections don't allow for the expression of bakasha, or no? It's like the Eved idea. It's that normally you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, unless there's an overriding need. An overriding need can allow for it to be a modification in the Shemona Esrei. You have that by Yalav Yavo. Yalav Yavo, granted it stems from Kedusha Siyom, but there's an overriding need to mention the fact we don't have the Beis HaMikdash at this point in time on Yom Tov. Right? So that's how you get out of the problem of the Gemara. It's not that it's changing the idea, it's saying that there's just a greater need. And the greater need produces the ability to be able to modify the Shemona Esrei. Now the next step is that okay, well, very nice. So you have this idea. We understand what they were trying to do, right? The reason why they put it in. We understand why they put it in shevach and in hodah, because this way every part of your tefillah will have the character of bakasha in it. But the next step is to say, how do you get around the problem of the other Gemara? So it must be that it's not that the Gemara is saying that it's an absolute, that there's no vehicle in shevach for bakasha. It's saying that this is the normal way Shemona Esrei goes, but if there's a more pressing need, the more pressing need can override the normative structure of tefillah. So you have that by Yalav Yavo, where you modify the actual tefillah itself because there's a certain need. Same thing here. There's a certain need of Aseret Shemei Tshuva. Granted, there's no Kedusha Sayom, but there's a certain need of Aseret Shemei Tshuva, so that allows them to go ahead and modify the structure. Assuming we accept that to be true, now we can start understanding Rav Hai Gaon and the Bahag. Rav Hai Gaon holds what? Rav Hai Gaon holds that it's only the last two. Only the last two can work. Bahag holds what? The Bahag holds. The Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon holds what? He holds. You can only see the last two because there's a precedent. So he says there's a precedent
because of those last two, or because only last two where they are.
Since an existing precedent exists to put in.
I'm saying only.
Well, so this. It's very nice to say there's a precedent, but why couldn't there be a precedent by shevach? And the answer is very simple. Because what does shevach do? Shevach is the matir for bakasha. So it would be absurd. There can be no place in this section to include a bakasha if you need the very section itself to allow you to ask something. That's easy. Okay? That's very nice, simple, right?
Yes.
There's a precedent to put them in hodah, which means it never could have been an idea to put them in shevach, to have bakashas in shevach. Why? Very simple. Because shevach is the matir for bakasha. So if shevach is the matir for bakasha, you can't have bakasha without shevach. So I think the Bahag saying like this. I think the Bahag saying is that the Bahag holds that you can only say b'sefer chaim because it's a sim shalom, and sim shalom is tachanunim. So what's he saying? I think what he's saying is like this. I think he's saying that he can't deny the fact that sim shalom is part of hodah, categorically. All right. I mean, if you look at Shemona Esrei, shevach, bakasha, hodah, in the section of hodah is sim shalom. It's contained in the section of hodah. But what the tefillah itself is what? A mixture. It's a hodgepodge. It's not a clear hodgepodge mixture. And that's an old word. It's a mixture of different concepts. So because it's a mixture, so even though it's in the category of hodah, but because in and of itself is a mixture, it's not clear what sim shalom is. That's why it could tolerate b'sefer chaim. Okay. In other words, the Bahag would hold is that anything that's pure shevach and pure hodah, right, not unadulterated, can tolerate bakasha. Excuse me, cannot tolerate bakasha. But if it's a mixture of different ideas, so why can't you put bakasha in there?
That's Sim Shalom.
That's Sim Shalom.
I thought Sim Shalom was just a...
So that's those are the different positions. Whereas Rav Hai Gaon would say that the category of Hodah allows for the expression of bakasha, because you see there's a precedent. The Bahag doesn't buy that. The Bahag says no, the category can't do it. It's a violation of the Gemara. But if the tefillah itself is one that has no clear identity, right, then it's okay to put bakasha in there.
So does he also...
Just to answer the last point, and then we'll move to the other sugya. So why would you say why would you say that you have to go back versus not going back within the first two positions? Okay. Yeah, why would you say one way or the other?
Because you put it in, so it's part of Shemon Esrei.
Okay. What's the other side going to say?
Because we only put it in, and it's really not part of Shemon Esrei.
Okay, so that's
It's the
nice.
exact same thing, just like
Right,
two
but you're
sides.
repeating the facts. But you I think you're onto something though.
Can
In other words,
you have a machlokes?
so we're saying, so Binyamin, let's just get clear. So what's the machlokas to say whether it's ma'akiv or not? That's very easy. The question is that when these things came about, these four insertions, so what happened? Did it change the structure of the tefillah? In other words, it's no different.
Insertions.
Well, no, hold on.
Because it
In other words, it's no different than Melech Kadosh.
It was just superimposed. It never changed the structure.
Right, that's the other side. The other side is that it's...
Sorry.
No. One side's going to say that...
Melech
Just
Kadosh
let's...
changing
Let me...
Shemon Esrei.
All right, exactly. A Melech Kadosh changed Shemon Esrei. When you say a Melech Kadosh instead of a Kel Kadosh, which we're going to do next, but if you say a Melech Kadosh instead of a Kel Kadosh, you've now changed the structure of Shemon Esrei. It's not the same Shemon Esrei anymore. It's a different Shemon Esrei.
Why?
Because it's a different entity.
Word.
Imagine Shemon Esrei is an entity.
I didn't get...
Imagine...
I mean, okay, yeah.
They're two different Shemon Esreis. One has a Kel
My
Kadosh.
5-year-old Havamina says, Uksov L'chaim is a change. Why is that Melech?
Oh, 1 second. So that's his point. He's saying that, just the same way in Malach Kadosh, if you don't say it, you have to go back. Why? Because you didn't say the right bracha, which means you didn't say the right Shemon Esrei. That's why you have to go back to the
On
beginning.
the bracha or is
Why not? Why-
No,
No,
the
no.
change in the bracha affects the entire structure of the Shemon Esrei.
Okay, so
Just like Yalav
let's
Yavo.
clarify.
What happens if you
Let's
forget?
clarify.
Right. What happens if you
There's a
forget?
change in the word?
What happens if?
bracha,
Yes. What happens if you
it's
forget?
considered...
A different Shemon Esrei. What happens if you forget to say Yalav Yavo?
That's who?
What happens if that's Tosfos? What happens if you forget to say Yalav Yavo? If you forget to say Yalav Yavo, you have to go back to the beginning because Yalav Yavo changed the structure of Shemon Esrei.
Well, what part of it changed?
Very simple. He's saying the same way. Why did Chazal make a Malchus Kadosh? Because during this period of time, there's an urgent need to recognize Malchus Kadosh Baruch Hu. One second. And when they made that change was such a strong change, so to speak, that it effectuated a change in the Shemon Esrei. Meaning that if I don't say Malchus Kadosh, no, halachically. This idea expresses itself in the halachic system that if I don't say Malchus Kadosh, they change the matbeya of the bracha. They change the tzura, the very structure of the bracha itself. If I don't say Malchus Kadosh, I haven't said the right Shemon Esrei. So Zacharin L'chaim is no different. If I don't say Zacharin L'chaim, if I leave it out, I haven't said the right Shemon Esrei for Seres Tshuva. I said the wrong one. This is the wrong
sounds like
Shemon
a
Esrei.
position.
One side is going to say it's a change in the structure. The other side said is what's Zachrenu? It's simply a modifier. They're just modifiers. Modifiers are never ma'akev. Okay? I guess the nafkamina would be, is it like Yalav Yavo or is it like Al Nisim? Al Nisim is a modifier, right? Because it's not ma'akev. Yalav Yavo, because the Kedushas Yom is ma'akev. That would be the nafkamina between the two. Okay, that's the sugya. Now do the second one. So, all right. So the other sugya is like this. The other question is the very sugya itself of the Malchus Kadosh. Okay. So the Gemara in Yud Beis Amud Beis says as follows. All right. Short Gemara, not a lot to follow. I'll explain it very simply. The Gemara says, Kol Shana Kula. All right. It's Amar Rabba Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei Derav. Okay. So Rabba said as follows. Throughout the entire year, Mispalel. Kula Adam Mispalel Kel Kadosh Melech Hevstaka Mishpat. So during the entire year, what do you say in Shemon Esrei? Hakel Kadosh and Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. Right? Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Except for when? Chutz Me'asar Yomim Shemein Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. Except for the Asar Shemei Tshuva. Okay? Which starts on the first day of Rosh Hashanah and ends in Yom Kippur. For those 10 days, what do you say? HaMelech HaKadosh and HaMelech HaMishpat. Clear so far?
Yeah.
Everyone know that? Everyone clear about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here comes the problem.
It says it should be...
Rav Elazar Amar, Afilu Amar Hakel Kadosh Yatsa. So he says, no, you don't have to say Malchus Kadosh. What can you say? Hakel Kadosh. You're Yotzei, you say Hakel Kadosh?
If you want to.
Well, we're going to get to that yet. So he says, why? Shenemar, Vayigba Shen Sfakos V'Mishva V'Hakel Kadosh Nikdash B'Tzedakah. A Masai, Vaigbash and Svakos, Mamishpat, Elu Asar Yom Shem Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim, Amar Hakel Hakadosh. Okay, so what does he say? Rav Elazar says like this. Rav Elazar says, he says, no, you don't have to say Hamal Hakadosh. You can say Hakel Hakadosh. Why? Because the pasuk says, Vaigbash Hashem Svakos Mamishpat. Basically, the pasuk says, when is God engaged in justice? Right, during these 10 days, and it says right afterwards, V'hakel Hakadosh Nikdash B'tzedakah. So we see that Hakel is equivalent to Hamelech. Okay? So you could say, at this point, what can you do? You can say,
They're both equivalent.
either one. Right? Oh, let me just finish the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Smai Havi Allah, how do we paskin? So Amar Rav Yosef, Hakel HaKadosh, Melech HaVtzaka Mishpat, Rab Amar, Melech HaKadosh, Melech HaMishpat, Hilchas HaKarabah. So how do we paskin? Hilchas HaKarabah. We paskin that, you say Hamelech HaKadosh. Okay? And not Hakel HaKadosh.
What's the one?
Okay, so hold on. So now, there's two logical. Okay. First question asking this is what?
Why the heck are they saying
Why?
Well, let's get a better question. The simpler question. What's the machlokas? What are they arguing about? Because Rav Elazar seems to have a very good counterpoint. Rav Elazar says, whatever you're trying to accomplish through Hamelech, you can accomplish through Hakel. So
What's the difference?
Right? What's Rabba's response to that? What's his response to that? Okay, that's question one. Oh.
What's Rob's?
But now you got a big, yeah. In other words, you see the pasuk says Vaigbash Fakos Mishpat. Okay. And by the way, just to make it even murkier, if you look at the Shmona Esrei, the Musaf, and Shacharis of Rosh Hashanah and Mincha and Mariv, you'd see it says Kadosh Atav in Rosh Hashanah ve'ein Eloka mibaldecha kakasuv Vaigbash Fakos Mishpat ve'akel Kadosh Nikdash B'tzedakah Brochat Hashem. Hamelech HaKadosh. So you see in the very tefillah itself,
Where is this?
it implies that they're interchangeable terms. It says Hakel HaKadosh Nikdash B'tzedakah, Brochat Hashem, Hamelech HaKadosh. Rav Elazar says what? Rav Elazar seems to say what? Yaakov, what does Rav Elazar say?
They're interchangeable. You would
Okay.
say-
Now, there's two ways you can interpret something being interchangeable. One way is think halachically. Good, that's one way. L'chachila b'diavad. Maybe what does Rav Elazar hold? He says l'chachila, you should say Hamelech. But let's say you didn't.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're fine. I would love if that was the way to learn this sugya. Nothing to worry about. Easy machlokas to define. Problem is, Rabbeinu Yonah spends a blot explaining one simple thing, right? And I'll read you one line. The one line he says is the line that's the most troubling, and I want you to tell me why. What in terms of how to understand
What is a blot?
daf, two sides of a daf, like the front and back. He says, what does it mean when Rav Elazar says the im amar hakel kadosh v'hakel mishpat yatsa? Rotzel Omar, listen to this. She'im yirtze yomar hamelech kadosh. If you want to, you can say hamelech kadosh. Vim yirtze yomar hakel kadosh. And if you want to, you can say hakel kadosh. Afil lechachila eno toloi ella birtsono. Which means what? It's up to you.
Whatever you wish.
You can say whatever you want. Now, he means like this. He says that, how do you understand Rav Elazar? You would think he means the chachila b'diavad, meaning, ideally you should say Hamelech HaKadosh. But if you didn't, and you said Hakel HaKadosh, you don't say. No. That's not what he's saying. Don't worry about the proofs. That's what Rabbeinu goes with the proofs. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that you have, when you're saying Shemon Esrei, you say Atah Kadosh, V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Tashim V'Chol Yom Yalu Chasela, Baruch Atah Hashem. What am I in the mood for today? Hakel or Melech?
Is that only during Sesame
That's exactly what he says. Okay, okay, good.
Why is that a good question?
That's a great question.
Why?
Because it's clear he doesn't say you can say Hamelech HaKadosh during the year. No one says you can say Hamelech HaKadosh during the year. Nobody. Even Rav Elazar.
But did he say they're
There's one issue is if they're really interchangeable. If they're interchangeable, but they're not really interchangeable because you can't say during the year. That's question one. But let's get even more stronger than that. There's a bigger problem here. What's the bigger problem? Since when do we allow someone in tefillah to say, you know what? I'm in the mood to say this one or that one. How can such a thing be l'chachila? How can you construct it to be l'chachila? I can say either Hakel or Melech. But that's not the strongest question. Based on that question, what should you therefore ask?
A strict time, why would we keep on going back and forth?
No, even better. Okay, let's put it to logics. Okay, so the Rabbah says during the year I say A. Okay, but on Sarsa Tshuva I say B. Right? Rav Elazar comes and says no. Rav Elazar says no, that's not true. You could say A or B, right? And both of them are fine. Which means what?
What's the function be?
What?
You
Would
could
be
say
function
A.
Well,
B.
is A, one second, but no, but we know you can't say B during the year. But during this period of time, you can say A or B. But if I can say A or B, what's
Why
B?
have B in the beginning?
Sorry. The question is, why would Chazara have a melech? Why would you ever have a melech? If both Hakel and a melech produce the same result, then why would they be socking to say a melech to begin with?
What is Masach?
You understand why it's such a powerful question?
Yeah.
That's the question. That's the hardest question to answer.
What is
If you posit that a melech and a kel are both equal methods of achieving whatever objective they're trying to
You
achieve.
can do whatever
Okay?
you want.
You can do whatever you want, then why the heck would you have a melech to begin with?
Maybe so you
Just
take
stick with a
the
kel.
mentality a little bit and have to think.
Oh, but then you're going to run into a trap. What's the trap?
The kale earlier in the bracha.
What? No, the trap isn't. One should be lechatchila. That's the trap. That's why this is such a difficult logical problem. In other words, if once you can't go into this sugya and say this is the hardest thing to do. You can't say, oh well, maybe a melech is more precise. Once you say a melech is more precise for a Sarashimei Tshuva, you're in what land are you in now? As you guys would say, l'chachila b'diavad land, and you can't be there. You can't be
Because it doesn't exist.
because he's saying that that's not what he holds. So construct for me a svara to tell me that somehow Chazal said you could say a melech, that they institute hamelech, but it's an option, right? If you want to or not, and make that make sense to me. Show me how that makes sense. I challenge you.
Hamelech is the theme.